So believe it or not, I want to talk about the Jewish calendar and Jewish holidays, which is like, haven't we had enough holidays already? I don't know if people are familiar with this website. It is an actual website. Is it a JewishHolidayToday.com? It's an actual website. Check it out after Shabbat if you have not seen it before. It's pretty great. Okay, so I want to talk today about a season we're currently in. We've talked about it a little bit already. And then I want to talk today about a holiday week we're currently in. Now, this holiday week isn't necessarily clearly enumerated on every Jewish calendar, but as a Zionist community, as a community that loves Israel, it's really important for us to know about this week of holidays. Okay, so let's dive in. We've already talked about the counting of the Omer. It's a biblical commandment to count the days between Pesach and Shavuot. This is called the counting of the Omer. But at this time of the year, we also have modern holidays. They're not biblical, they're not rabbinic. These holidays have only been around for like 75 or 80 years or so. These are holidays that have to do with our modern state of Israel, that is, Medinat Yisrael. And as a community of Zionists, as we've said, as a community that loves Israel, these holidays are very important to us, even though sometimes Israel can seem far away and sometimes Israel can seem very close by, but these holidays every year are important to us. And there are 3 of them. When I was studying abroad in Israel as part of my rabbinic education, we went to a place called Kibbutz Hanaton. This is the only Masorti conservative kibbutz in Israel. And we met a rabbi named Yoav Endi, and he's a founder and leader of the kibbutz's educational center. And he spoke to us very briefly about these 3 holidays. We weren't there during this time of year, the spring. We were actually there in the fall. So he kind of just mentioned these holidays in a brief phrase that really stuck with me. He called these holidays the Yamim Noraim Yisraelim. The Yamim Noraim Yisraelim. And this is, of course, a play on words because we know that the Yamim Noraim, our days of awe, are on our calendar every autumn, beginning with Rosh Hashanah, concluding with Yom Kippur. And these days of awe, Yamim Noraim, are days that uniquely capture our focus and our attention. It's a 10-day span with 2 days of Rosh Hashanah at the beginning and 1 day of Yom Kippur at the end. Now, our Yamim Noraim Yisraelim, the Israeli days of awe, they're in fact strikingly similar. They've already started. They started a couple days ago with Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura, the day of remembrance of the Holocaust and of all the heroic acts of resistance that were done during the Holocaust. And these holidays end just over a week later, about a little over half a week from now, with 2 holidays back to back, 2 days of holidays in a row. So the first of these is Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day, the day of remembrance of fallen soldiers and victims of terrorism. And the second, immediately after, is Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, the day on the Jewish calendar when our ancestors signed their names in support of the reality of a nation of Israel in the land of Israel. So these days of awe, Israeli days of awe, start with fear and awe and end with celebration. So this year, as I was saying, we've already commemorated Yom HaShoah. We did this on Wednesday night and Thursday, and we have not yet commemorated Yom HaZikaron, which we will do next Tuesday night and Wednesday, and we have not yet celebrated Yom HaAtzmaut, which we will do next Wednesday night and Thursday. So here on our campus this coming Tuesday night, we'll commemorate this season with a screening of the film October 8th, which is about the terrifying after effects felt globally and in our very own neighborhood of October 7th. And here on our Adat Shalom campus this coming Wednesday night, in case you don't have plans yet for Wednesday night, our Israeli dance friends are having a special session of Israeli dance in celebration of Yom HaAtzmaut. And next Shabbat, together as our Adat Shalom community, we will celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut. We'll celebrate the existence of the modern state of Israel by coming to shul wearing blue and white. Now, if you need something to wear, you can just wear your Shabbaton t-shirt, appropriately colored, and we'll also have a delicious Israel-themed Kiddush. But right now, today, we're not yet to our moment of celebration. We're still in our moment of fear and awe. This past week on Wednesday morning, which is Erev Yom HaShoah, I had an experience that I was not at all expecting, but as soon as it happened, I knew I needed to tell you all about it. Here's the story. So many of you already know my mom has Alzheimer's, and I've been joining a Zoom support group for women who are caregivers, not just for people with Alzheimer's, but women in a variety of situations where we have to care for and or coordinate care for someone in our families. So this week I joined the Zoom group, but I was wearing a fleece pullover with a logo of a Jewish organization on it. And you know how it goes. A few moments later, I'm explaining that I'm a rabbi. And of course, the conversation in the group drastically shifted. One member of the group began speaking with great distress and emotion about anti-Semitism. and particularly about anti-Semitism on college campuses. She spoke about her dismay and disappointment that her alma mater was planning to host a popular musician with known anti-Israel views on her campus. Even though she had been part of a successful fight to stop this musician from being on campus, she had been successful in helping to shut down anti-Israel rhetoric, she was, of course, extremely upset about what had happened. So she was telling the story and then she stopped herself. She didn't want to take up more time with the conversation. She said, "This isn't what this group is about." And she said, "I don't want this to be our focus today. I don't want this to be a distraction." So the group facilitator did something in that next moment that I really didn't expect. She said, "Actually, I think this conversation is very much related to what this group is about." And she said, stress is cumulative. When we're in a position to be caring for others, of course, we're going to undergo all different types of stress. And any stress that we experience will combine with all the other stressors we might be experiencing at that moment in life to influence how we're able to respond in any given moment. So the group facilitator said, "Let's talk about anti-Semitism." So the facilitator put this group member who was expressing these concerns about anti-Semitism in what is called in the group the coaching chair. So when the person is in the coaching chair, this person's experience, this person's distress usually, becomes the focus of the group's conversation that day. The facilitator will engage with the person in the coaching chair directly, and the rest of us listen, learn, and contribute appropriately as we're able. So the facilitator helped the person in the coaching chair share more about where she was coming from. She talked about her 2 children, both in college on 2 different college campuses, that are both actively working to support Israel, active in pro-Israel peer education. She talked about her ancestors who fled their homes in generations past when their family members were attacked in pogroms. And like many of us here today, and here virtually today, when the issue of anti-Semitism comes up, she's afraid for her safety. Not just her emotional safety, of course, but also her physical safety and the physical safety of her family. So in time, the facilitator asked the person in the coaching chair if she could talk her through a particular processing protocol. It's a method explained by author Byron Katie. Maybe some of you have heard of this. And the person in the coaching chair said, yes, she'd give it a try. Okay, so the first step in this method is to take the stress that she's experiencing and articulate exactly what it is in one specific statement. So she tried a couple of times and then kind of came to the statement, society should do more to address anti-Semitism. So once you come up with a statement, then you go through the protocol and ask a series of questions. The first question is this true? So the person in the coaching chair said, yes. And the second question, the facilitator said, okay, take a breath and really let this sink in. Is this statement that's causing your stress really true? And the person in the coaching chair took a breath and took a moment and said, absolutely, this is true. Now, the third question in the protocol, how do you feel acknowledging this? And the person in the coaching chair said, calm and angry. And we talked about this for a few moments in the group, that in a way it was calming and centering to proclaim this truth and just know it, to fully acknowledge the reality of her Jewish experience. And at the same time, it's infuriating to be in the world and to see the disgusting, embarrassing, and inexplicable falling short of humanity, our inability to do the right thing. And then the last question in the protocol, what would I be without this thought? And the person in the coaching chair said, a victim. So this thought, this knowing that society should do more to address anti-Semitism, allowed this person in the coaching chair to stand up, to stand proudly, to take brave action in a frightening and unfair world in defense of herself, her family, and her people. This thought that society should do more to address anti-Semitism gave her strength. And then the conversation and the reflection really opened up. The person in the coaching chair was able to start saying, wait, it's not my personal problem to fix all of society. It's my personal problem to cope with the reality of the situation. In other words, as Rabbi Tarfon says in Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, section 16, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. V'lo ata ben chorin li batel mimena. It's not your duty to finish the work, but at the same time, you can't neglect it. The person in the coaching chair continued and said her deep knowing that this is true, that society should do more to address anti-Semitism, gave her a place from which she could feel grounded and calm. She acknowledged that sometimes she feels she can't be a good Jew, a great mom, a role model, a positive person in society if she doesn't carry the whole burden of this entire world's problem 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But she was also able to start acknowledging, wait a second, this problem isn't my fault. This problem is huge. There's not even a word to describe the magnitude of it. She said it's like trying to stop a tidal wave with an umbrella. And at the same time, she said clearly, and I think we all feel this in our own ways, she said, I have a need in my life to feel like I make a difference. And then the group facilitator helped her see, and helped us see, that she was making a difference. She helped stop anti-Israel speech on her own college campus. 2 children she has, powerful pro-Israel advocates. There are Jewish organizations like Stand With Us that are actively fighting legal battles to change the way things are done on campuses and in our society, and we are winning. These pro-Israel organizations are winning. So no, we can't stop a tidal wave with an umbrella, but sometimes we do get it right. Sometimes society does get it right. For example, when you wander in a support group because your mom has Alzheimer's, and you find that the facilitator of the group is more than willing to hold space to acknowledge the reality of the evil of anti-Semitism, because acknowledging that reality and holding space to process it is part of helping people heal and helping society heal. We can remember that sometimes society does get it right. We can acknowledge our victories, and that doesn't mean we have to pretend the problem is gone, because we know it's not. We're not trying to diminish the problem. We're trying to make sure the problem doesn't overpower us. We're trying to make sure that nothing stops us from being ourselves, from being Jewish, from being a force for good. So this year, during our Yamim Noraim Yisraelim, may we recommit to being a force for good. May we acknowledge that painfully our society is indeed marred by evil. And at the same time, our society has moments of healing, of change, of getting it right. May we know that it is not upon us to completely finish the task. May we remember that we don't have to figure out how to stop a tidal wave with an umbrella. And at the same time, may we know that we can never desist from the task, that we will never desist from the task, that all of us have the power to make a meaningful difference. Shabbat Shalom.